Hello, Whisky folk. How are we? It's Roy. Another Thursday night, a bonus Thursday night. This is the second week in the middle of the month. This is a 5-week month. So for Thursdays, there's 5 Thursdays in January. So instead of working out whether to do the second or the third Thursday, I decided to do both. So hello, everybody. Welcome to you all. So many of you waiting as well outside the pub doors, even for an odd week where I wasn't probably supposed to be going live. It's wonderful to see you all. It's wonderful to welcome you in. And of course, if you're picking this up on the replay, fantastic. And thank you so much for doing that as well. If you are enjoying it, please leave a like, but only if I've remembered to leave timestamps for you to help you navigate through this stream. These streams tend to go on for a little while. They tend to be about 2 hours. And I'm determined again this week to keep with my New Year's resolution to try and keep the streams to under 2 hours. But it's difficult because I talk a lot and there seems to be a lot of bullying goes on, people trying to get me to go longer than I already do. Wonderful to have you all in. How are we all tonight? I can see already of you, we've got 88 in. Fantastic to see you all. The theme tonight, just quickly before I jump into the lounge and shout out and welcome a few of you. The theme is how whiskey changes. It's quite a loose theme, like it always is, but the idea being not any kind of specific whiskey changing, but rather how whiskey changes for us, for our personal perspective. That is how it changes in the bottle, how our relationship changes with that whiskey as we go through our journey. The first dram to the last dram. Maybe we can go back to the same bottle again and have a completely different perspective of it, or we can buy a repeat bottle and have a completely different perspective. So we're also talking about how whiskey itself changes, and that is how production, process, efficiencies, technology, supply chain, barley strains, how all of that has influenced and forced changes in whiskey over the years as well, which is a lot to cram in, but we're going to keep it quite light and just kind of skip over those subjects. And if there's anything that kind of strikes a chord, we can go into a wee bit more detail in a future stream. Daniel Vermas is saying Aquaviti 5 hours is not enough. You know, Daniel, maybe one of these days we'll do some kind of marathon stream, work out some kind of event that would be appropriate to do something a wee bit longer. So I'm just going to jump into the lounge and grab a few of you guys who have been waiting patiently. So many of you in. In fact, I booted this up and started to set things up around about 9 o'clock tonight, and there were already people in chatting, and it made me realize I don't need to be here. I could literally just schedule a stream, tell everybody what time it's going to be, and just leave the chat running, and just let it run for 2-3 hours, however long it wanted to, and it can just be a chair or a blank screen. I don't actually need to be there hosting the thing. You guys can all just hang out in the lounge and chat amongst yourselves. It's really great to see that. It really is. I want to give a shout out to the first 10 guys that were in tonight, way back at that early point. We had Mark Goins in, we had Art Baggy, we had Gregor, he was in nice and early as well, Stephen Davison, Sell It Bang, or Sell It Bang H, which is a really funny name, I think. Tom R was in, Hoagie was in, nice to see you, Hoagie, how's things in Germany? Keith Corbett, Vito from the States, and Emery McGill. 10 guys that were in super early. We also have Toby Field in. Good to see you, Toby. I know you got your package today. You got your t-shirt. I'm going to mention the t-shirts again. I got lots and lots of questions after last week. I'll pick that up in a wee minute. Jason Whiskey Wise is in, looking after me tonight. Jason Newstar, thank you so much for turning up as well. And it's just wonderful to have you here week in, week out as well. The Whiskey Rev has threatened to join us a wee bit later as well. So you can say hello to Jason and the Rev and thank them for looking after the chat and keeping things moving. If you're struggling to get something super important to me, it might help you to try and get their attention as well. Jason Whiskey Wise or the Whiskey Rev, and they can also send me through a direct message as well, which I'm pulling up now. It looks like somebody tells me that there's a super chat came in already. Wow, fantastic. Well, I was getting set up. Jason Whiskey Wise tells me that Fantastic. Matthias Caskmate over in Denmark sent over a virtual dram to say cheers, 7K around the corner, stairway to heaven. Fantastic, Matthias. Thank you so, so much for your virtual dram. It's wonderful to have you watching and supporting like you do. Daniel also has, sorry, not Daniel, Matthias also has his own channel. He's just released his first video under Caskmate Everything Whiskey, and pretty good production value already, Matthias. Well done. And thank you, my friend. I want to tell you what I'm sipping, what I've just finished there. Quite an interesting dram. Nicholas Burt is in. Good to see you, Nicholas. Stephen Davison. I mentioned you already, Stephen. Fantastic to have you in again. Radek is in. Wonderful. Jean de la Cuisine. Good to see you as well. Hello right back at you, Jean. Fantastic to have you in. Kenneth Kennelty is in. Mikey Hay, superb. Vito, I've mentioned Vito already. Joe RG, that's a new name, Joe. I think it's a new name. Great to see you and wonderful to welcome you in. We've got Andy Garbage Muncher. We've got another muncher in tonight. I wonder if Multi-Haggis Muncher is in. I wonder if Matthew's in as well. Andy, that looks like a new name. Good to see you as well. Greetings to you too. Welcome in. Thomas Buck is here. Fantastic. Reb Mordecai is in. Reb, I noticed a question about shipping samples in plastic bottles. I don't. I have had samples shipped to me in plastic bottles, and I don't notice a flavour taint. I do occasionally have samples arrive that have leaked, but I think it's less to do with plastic versus glass, and it's more to do with just how tightly the cork has been set. For instance, these two fantastic and really quite generous samples were sent to me from Gustav at the Whisky Couch. Now, he was over visiting some family in the UK, and he brought these along with him and shipped them while he was here. But both of them just leaked a tiny little bit, so there was kind of a smell from the package, but they didn't lose much liquid, and I think it helps. It's happened to me. I've sent things before. Oops, I've sent things before that have leaked just a little while they've been in transit. It's nice just to give that an extra kind of a quarter turn just to try and tighten it up. And also remember, if you're shipping anything that's going to be in a plane, leave plenty space in the neck. I understand that that helps with the pressure and the altitude and things like that. If there's more air in there, I understand it's better. Island Hopper Stuart, fantastic. Another new name. Good to see you in. He's saying good evening, and good evening to you, Island Hopper Stuart. Good evening, Stuart. Whiskey Radar is in. Chad Adams is in. Wonderful, Chad. McAllen Fine and Rare, the Doc. I'm always looking for your name there, Doc. We need to find a little logo. Actually, no. I'm used to looking for that little green user icon that pops up now. Good to see you, Doc. How are you? Tony Evans is in as well. Great to see you, Tony. Roth is in as well. Ebhead, fantastic to see you. And he's saying, it's after 2 hours. It's getting fun. Oscar Madison is in as well. That's a new name, Oscar, I think. Welcome, my friend. Christina Zerpoli, Daniel Vermaas, Metalman71. So many of you, 132 of you in. So let me go on with the theme while I've got you all here. Whiskey for me has never really stayed static for any amount of time. It's what kind of like why I like to have these kind of staple whiskies like Glengoyne 10 or Lagavulin 16, things that are a little bit like an anchor point in my whiskey journey, things that I have a fairly vivid memory of what they tasted like when I first really had that initial epiphany with them, let's say. So when I go back and sip them again, and they taste a little bit different, I've kind of got a good idea that that's as much about me changing as it is the whiskey. So it's kind of nice to have those kind of anchor points, if you like, but whiskey is constantly changing. Let me give you an example that quite recently, you may know that I suggested that Arran 14 was my whiskey of the year last year, and I stand by that, I really do. I had 2 bottles of Arran 14 last year, and both of them, each time I finished them, I was very, very certain I was going to go out immediately and replace them. And that's exactly what I did. I made sure that virtually my next purchase was another Arran 14. I enjoyed them so much. But I'd forgotten on both occasions, and I've been reminded again on this occasion, that the first few drams from Arran 14 has not even started to relax yet. It's really one of the most obvious examples I've ever come across of how how the whiskey changes. Now, the scientists will tell you that it doesn't, that from a molecular perspective, whiskey is stable. And it doesn't matter how long you leave it for, it stays the same from a scientific perspective. But of course, you and I know that that's nonsense. It changes remarkably sometimes. I'm talking about a single bottle, just one bottle being left open. If you find that you're not really quite connecting with a whiskey when you first open it, or it's not really doing what you expected, it's not as good as you'd hoped it was going to be, don't give up on it. Leave it for a little while, go back, and then go back and keep going back. And when it's round about 2/3, halfway down and beyond, it really starts to change. Now, I'm not suggesting that it takes months and months for this to happen, or years. I'm speaking about just the first couple, 3, 4 weeks even. The exact same thing if you pour it fresh from a bottle and leave it in an open glass for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The change is remarkable. I find it fascinating. Sometimes I'll go and pour a dram and leave it sitting for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll go back to the dram, but not sip it, pour a fresh one. And I'll sit with the fresh one and the one that's been sitting for 15 minutes to see if I can pick up any changes. Now, it might be that I'm just convincing myself, but I feel strongly that I do. I feel like it's a real thing. So that's the first kind of 3 segments of whiskey changing that I'm going to talk about. What say you? Gregor is saying, does it change, or have your memories of the taste been affected, and is that the change? I think you're going to find, Gregor, that that's going to be my point, my overarching point over all of these things, that we have to remember that while we feel strongly that a lot of these things are changing, and for sure they are, that one of the biggest volatile components in this is us. We're probably, certainly when I'm speaking about myself, I'm probably the single most unreliable component there. Hi everyone, good to see you. Saying alcohol does evaporate at a different rate than water. Yes, it does, and I wonder if that's the only changes that we're talking about. Andreas is in, great to see you. He's saying, true, I have a single sherry cask Arran, and the second dram was a sudden lavender and cherry bonanza. So I guess the first one was a bit tight. I find that all the time. Alan, the whiskey friend, has said, Aquavita, I find it in Clynelish 14. I panicked recently, Alan. I've been telling the world about how much I love Clynelish 14, and I stand by that as well. But recently I bought and opened a bottle of Clynelish 14. I think I've mentioned it on streams before. And it wasn't what I remembered. And the second dram and the third dram, it felt heavier, it felt denser, and it felt sweeter. It wasn't what I remembered. But recently I've got the bottle over my shoulder so I could remind myself to talk about this tonight. Recently I poured another one and I tasted Clynelish, and I was very, very relieved. Skogsmard is saying, why are 10 to 12-year-olds so common as the lowest age statement expression of whiskies? Well, once upon a time, Skogsmard, that used to be the vintage, that used to be the age, that used to be the premium age. But the industry got themselves in a bit of a mess during the slow period of single malts and whiskey in general throughout the late 70s and 80s. And because of the proliferate, there was just so much stock around, I guess. There was a proliferation of age-stated whiskies came out to show how old they could, so it went from 8 years to 10 years to 12 years. And there was a time that 15 and 18-year-old whiskies were considered too over-oaked and too woody. But now we see those as being the start of the kind of premium tiers. So for a lot of people, the perspective are that 10 and 12-year-old are entry-level whiskies. And I guess that is true nowadays, but there was once upon a time, a different age with different whiskey, sure, that 10 and 12-year-old whiskies were very well aged and super premium. Gregor is saying, do I get a bonus point for the quiz for that conjecture? Perhaps, Gregor, we'll see. I think the quiz might be a bit tough tonight, if I'm honest. I was looking at the questions before we went live. Maltcask, Etty, good to see you in. Etty is saying, I feel like Buna 12 is going downhill in my opinion. Absolutely loved my very first bottle a few years ago, but quality seems to have been declining since from bottle to bottle. I've got a theory about that. Don't dismiss it out of hand. But I did taste a Bunnahabhain 12 fairly recently, perhaps about 8 or 9 months ago now, actually, that didn't taste to me like what I recognise Bunnahabhain 12 tasting like. And I think there may have been a time when they had perhaps more aged stocks available to kind of boost their 12-year-old. And I'm not sure that that's available now or whether they're doing the same thing, but that's just kind of me guessing, because I feel like you, Etty, that I did in fact taste something a wee bit different. I've just had 2 virtual drams in. I don't have anything to sip. I'll pour some of this Cleanleash 14. Just a wee bit. Put that down there. I've had a virtual dram in from a friend, Vin, in No Nonsense Whisky. Thank you very, very much. I'm not sure if he said anything. Let me catch up with the chat. A down payment on Coin Admin. Cheers, dude. You're very, very welcome, Vin. I'll talk to you a little bit about that as well. Yeah, that wasn't on my list to talk about tonight. I'll maybe talk about that, Vin, at the end of the month, on the 31st. I also missed a virtual dram in from Jonathan Timms. Please consider my question re-oxidization. I'll post next. Go ahead, Jonathan. Oxidization. Does fill level really matter beyond the neck? The surface area to react with oxygen is fixed in a straight-sided bottle. Won't the rate of oxidization be the same and the neck less? Well, I guess when the bottle is sealed, I guess that there's oxygen in the bottle, right? And there's going to be more oxygen the lower the level drops. I'm just shooting from the hip here. Honestly, Jonathan, I don't know for sure, but it seems to me that the more oxygen that's in the bottle, in that sealed bottle, the more there is to interact with the whiskey. So it should have a bigger effect, to my mind, the less volume of whiskey. Yes, the surface area stays the same beyond the shoulder. So I'm not very sure, but like I said, I think depending on which of these 3 areas of whiskey changing, the first being in the bottle, the second being to us and from our perspective in our own whiskey journeys, and the third being how whiskey's changed over the decades, depending on which one of those gets the most kind of interest, we can probably do a future stream kind of talking about that and our experiences and going into a bit more detail. Do you find, Jonathan, let me ask you, that it does actually change for you? Thank you very, very much for your virtual jam, Jonathan, and welcome in. Bobby Parnell as well from the States has also sent across a virtual dram, and he's saying, he hasn't said any comment, he's just sent me a dram. Bobby, you're so generous, you really, really are. It's wonderful to have you in supporting me like you do, and it's fantastic to raise a glass and say cheers to you over in Texas. I wonder if you're able to stay tonight. And look, it's bourbon night is in. I don't know if that's Chad or Sarah. And I don't know if you've spoke to me directly already, but that's out of pure coincidence that you guys are in tonight and I'm flying your colours. Can everybody raise a wee glass to Chad and Sarah over at It's Bourbon Night? Not just for the fantastic show that they're putting out there, the production quality, the topics, the professionalism, the easy access content that they are putting out there. It's just very, very high end. I aspire to that quality of content. It would be wonderful if I could put that out. To congratulate them on that, but also on the fact that very recently, just before Christmas time, I think, that the two of them became engaged and will be married. So I'll raise a glass to Chad and Sarah and say congratulations and thanks for joining tonight. Thank you very, very much. And a big thanks to Bobby as well for your virtual dram, my friend. JW Baseman is in. Good to see you. He's saying, Roy, I had a very similar experience with Lefroy 10-year-old. And the doc is saying, I have nights when no whiskey tastes good. Believe me, it's mostly me. That's happened to me. And it's happened to me more than one occasion where literally you get a very similar off taste to every dram that you offer up. And it's happened to me on a club night as well. It was a disaster. But that just goes to show that it happens. And sometimes it can be down to what you've eaten, the environment, it can be down to your health. And it can be down to just when you're in that place, that's probably the best time to have a break from whiskey. And Jason Whiskey Wise is telling me that it's Chad that it's in. Good to have you, Chad, and congratulations, my friend. I got to meet these guys last year when I was over in Texas. It's Bourbon Night. Chad and Sarah were there, and they gifted me. We exchanged T-shirts. It was fantastic. Etty is saying that he fully agrees with me. Oh, just as the chat jumps. I hate it when that happens. He said the newer bottles taste younger, are lighter in colour, and the sherry is not as present. I wonder what you're talking about there. More citrus notes than Christmas cake. Wonder which bottling you're talking about there, Etty. Sillet Bang is saying, thanks for banging the Glengoyne drum. I've made a return to the 12 and have been loving it. It's a great whiskey. I took a punt on the M&S 14-year-old tonight, so hopefully it's just as good. Yeah, it's a 40% bottling, whereas I think the 12 is 43. But yeah, it's fine. It's I feel it's one of the 14-year-old has been put together and sold through M&S for a very specific market, and it's got to be easy access, so no high ABV and things. It's got to be nice and light and accessible, and I think that's what the 14 is pitched at. But it's a fine whiskey. Emery McGill is saying, I think there is something to be said about beginner whiskies being young in most recommendations, when one could argue that they're harder to find nuance in. Just a theory. Yeah, I think that when you're a beginner, nuance isn't always, it takes a while for that to happen. What you're really looking for as a beginner is big, obvious hooks. So you're looking for that bold sherry, or you're looking for the weight of the peat smoke, or you're looking for the sweet vanilla and caramel and toffee. That's the things that you're looking for, the big broad brush hooks. And only through time do you start to, through practice and practice and making notes and labeling and tasting and contrast and all of these great things, that you start to be able to label and define more subtle things. It does take practice and a long time. Matt Wally is in and he's saying, it's a new name, Matt, as well. I wish the chat would stop jumping. He's saying, if you could recommend 3 drams for a group of non-whiskey drinkers in their first tasting, what would they be? I would suggest Glenmorangie 10 to represent bourbon cask. And it's nice and tropical and pineapple-y and fresh, so you might try and lead people towards trying to pull those notes out of a Glenmorangie 10. Then I would say something that's kind of extreme sherry profile, so maybe like a Glendronach, like an aged Glendronach, like a 15-year-old or an 18-year-old Allardyce, but they are 46%. But because, especially with Allardyce, that doesn't taste like it's 46%. It's a softer on the palate. Something like that to represent the Allardyce, the sherry cask style. And then obviously you would go with something peated. So perhaps something from Islay or the Ledaig 10, even though that's 46.3% as well. The Ledaig 10 would be a good one. But also when you're sitting with beginners, make sure you're talking about water and you're letting them add water drop by drop to try and break open the dram and release the flavors and the aromas, but also allow them to add water from the perspective of dilution as well, and bring the ABV down to a point that's accessible to them. And make sure that from the get-go, they're never embarrassed or feel awkward about adding water to whiskey. It's absolutely fine. Whiskey Closet is saying, do you think NAS whiskey or younger whiskies change more over time than older whiskies? That's difficult to answer. I think all whiskey changes. And I'm going to talk about that in a little minute when we crack open the bottles that I'm going to compare tonight. I need to try and catch up. It's Bourbon Night saying, look who's talking, Aquavite. Your production value and editing is on point. Yeah, you've been very complimentary to me in the past as well, chat, and I'll thank you for that. But I'm watching you guys and taking tips from you. Oh, to have a studio like you guys have. Wow. The Whiskey Niche is saying, I'm finding the Loch Lomond 12 gets better the more time you spend with it. I'm so glad you're enjoying that, Whiskey Niche, and good to welcome you in. It looks like a new name. It's fantastic, but it's challenging. It's quite a dirty 12-year-old, that Loch Lomond 12. But yes, I absolutely love it. And I gave it out as a Christmas gift to a couple of folk this year. I love it so. Okay, let's see if I caught up now. No, Gregor Patterson, that looks like a new name, Gregor. Wonderful to have you in. He's enjoying a wild turkey while he's bought me a virtual dram. I'll raise this glass of Clynelish 14. And they say Slantia, Gregor, and thank you very much for your virtual dram. Aquaviti, you missed a super chat. Wow, they're coming in so fast. Wow. Thank you very much, Rolf. Jason had my back as well, saying, hello, Roy, what is your opinion about SMWS? And are you a member? I live in Edinburgh, looking for some place where I can taste and talk whiskey regularly. Fantastic, Marcin. So I would say that, firstly, thank you very, very much for your virtual dram. I am a member. I renewed my membership for the SMWS. I think I'm into my 3rd year now, I think. They usually have a nice offer on for you to renew your membership, and I do get good value out of it, and I think you would as well, because the vaults is a really nice environment to go and enjoy whiskey. All of it is single cask strength, so if you enjoy that type of whiskey, that high ABV, it's wonderful. They do great food at the vaults, but you've also got in the centre, you've got the Kaleidoscope in the members area in Queen Street as well. So just for that, I think it's quite nice. But also, as an independent bottler, the SMWS are still, I wouldn't say they're peerless, but they're up there. They're one of the best. I would have to say they're one of the best. I mean, I like Cadenheads is fantastic. Signatory Vintage, Gordon MacPhail. There's a lot of good indies out there. North Star in Glasgow. I mean, to be honest, it's whiskey they're bottling. They all do a good job. But yes, I would have to say I think it's worth it. It's certainly worth it to try it for a year, and you can usually pick up introductory offers and things where you might even get a bottle out of them with your first membership. Nigel Slynn is sending over an apology for being late. That's no problem, Nigel. I'm just very, very glad that you can join us. No worries. And Sevi is in The Alchemist, probably late because of his new baby, saying, howdy all, good evening from a crisp, clear Glasgow. It is, it's very, very cold. It never warmed up today at all. Are we getting our science on tonight? Love it. Well, that's interesting. We're probably not being a scientist myself. It's kind of much more of a personal angle I'm coming at here, but there's definitely science involved, and I'm very, very intrigued. And I found myself, as I was getting ready tonight and I was doing a wee bit of reading, I found myself falling down the science wormhole there and just getting dragged in a wee bit to it. But that's something that we can talk about when I feel a bit more comfortable about it. And I feel like I've got my head around some of that, because there are scientific studies and reports out there that will tell you that whiskey does not change. On the SWA website, it tells you that whiskey in the bottle doesn't change. It's stable, and that it doesn't change over decades. We know that that's not true, because the whiskey that I had as I was setting up tonight, and as I finished, as I was speaking to you, was this. This is an old Deanston, an 8-year-old. This was gifted to me from my cousin and whiskey apprentice, Padawan, Kevin Grant. He's often in. You might see Kevin in tonight. He gifted this to me, and it's a wonderful bottle and a wonderful snapshot of history. This is looking like it's 75 CL, but it says 40% volume. So I think this is probably a 1980s bottling from Deanston at 8 years old. It's got an 8-year-old age statement here. Screw top as well, which is interesting. If you'd poured this for me blind, I could never have told you it was Deanston, of course. I would have guessed that this was an old blend, but I could have absolutely guaranteed that I could have told you it was an old whiskey from an old bottling. And I'm not talking about an aged whiskey, a mature whiskey. I could have absolutely told you that it was an old whiskey that's been in glass for a long time. It had all of those flavors. And there are people out there such as Angus McRailed. You can pick up him in a couple of Ralphie videos, actually. Fantastic, fascinating guy to talk to. Talking about OBE, or old bottle effect. And I think that's exactly what they're talking about, that flavour. And I imagine when I pour these black labels in a little while, we might get some of that from the older ones here. Fantastic. Stephen Reynolds is in. He's saying light may be the factor too. You never know how these things have been stored. You should try to, if possible at home, keep whatever whiskey you have on the go out of direct sunlight, out of bright light in general, and try and keep it in a cool place. You know, the usual rules, I would say. And Aquavita, I think that what they're saying is if the bottle is sealed and unopened, it does not change over time. No, the SW8 website actually talks about it being opened or unopened, Everwind. Very, very curious. I never had much time to go into it in detail, but I'm going to pull that up and read it. And if I remember, if I make a note, I'll share it with you, Everwind. SWA. Okay. Donald Rance is in. Good to see you, Donald. He's saying, have you tried any of the Power single cask expressions? None of the single cask, no. I'm familiar with the John's Lane, obviously. I gave that a shout out recently. I love it. I got to try some of the 6-year-old single cask over the holidays, and it blew me sideways, I can imagine. I must try it if you can get it. I love the single pot still Irish whiskey, I really do. Jason Coates, good to see you. He's saying, interestingly, he has a bottle of 80s JW Black that he bought at auction last month. The difference between it and the modern one is absolute. Jason, I don't doubt I have a 1980s one over my shoulder here, and we're going to give it a wee try. Let's set that up, actually, while I talk about other things, and we'll let these whiskies breathe a little bit since they've been in their bottle, some of them for 40 plus years, right? So what I've done here is what I do, the kind of Aquavita coloured dot thing. You can see a yellow dot on this one here, a red dot on this one here, and there's a green dot on the contemporary one that's sitting behind me. And I'm going to pour them into corresponding glasses, and then I'm just going to kind of shuffle them around blind, and I can speak to you and give you my feedback while I don't really know what I'm tasting. What's interesting about these two actually is I bought this one on the left as a 1970s bottle. And it could be a 1970s, but I don't think so, because it actually says here that it's a 40% alcohol by volume. That came in on the 1st of January 1980. Now, it may have been labelled as such in advance of that legislation coming in, of course, but there's usually some other markers here that would give you the idea that it's a 1970s, and they don't really exist because it's measured in metric as well in terms of volume. It's 75 cl instead of the old 26 and 2/3 whatever ounces it was. So I think this is an early 80s bottling because it's got the rounded edges. The newer one has this kind of angular edge to the square bottles. Clearly they're both square Johnnie Walker bottles, right? But perhaps you can see that one is just ever so slightly, can I see the camera there? And one is angled and squared off. This is kind of more like the modern one. This one, the one that's a bit more angled, I think is late 80s, potentially early 1990s. All screw top. Both, like Jason, both bought at auction. And I have here a contemporary Johnnie Walker Black Label. This one was the most expensive out the three. I don't usually have Johnnie Walker Black Label here at home. I know it's very well regarded by a lot of people as kind of the Kickstarter Scot. Interestingly, in fact, Scott and Bart, both of them from the Scotch Test Dummies, they owe their entire whiskey journey and that channel to Johnnie Walker Black Label, a gift from Scott's wife way back when. And that kind of got him into whiskey, so it really can't be that bad. And I've had Johnnie Walker Black Label when I've been out and about, and perhaps it's the only thing that they've got when I'm in the mood for a dram, and I'm quite happy sipping it. It's a 12-year-old product. Yes, the majority of it in contemporary would be grain, but there's enough engagement in there. There's nothing wrong with grain, and I think it's put together really quite nicely. I mean, I think it's one of these whiskies that's very good at using in cocktails, highballs, mixers, whatever, but it's fine to sip on its own. So these glasses, I've got the yellow dots in the bottom. So as I sip these, you'll see what I'm sipping. But I'm going to close this camera down so I don't really see, and I'm not really leading myself. And I've got the dots on the bottom that correspond to each of these. And I'll pour. We can't have an uncorking tonight. So it's screw top, every one of them. I smell this straight away. I can smell that old bottle thing I'm talking about. It's kind of a dank and dusty old bottle type smell. So we don't need to pour much. So this little bottle this whiskey has been cooped up in it for potentially close to 40 years. Let's pop it over here. Let's get the 1990s, late 80s, 90s poured. Try and pour a similar amount. Whisky Radar is saying he thinks it also helps to store bottles out of their boxes. It's sometimes really off-putting how much the packaging smells of solvents or glue. Yeah, I wonder if some people talk about a cardboardy flavour from whiskies, from older whiskies. And I don't know if that's the whiskey or perhaps an old dusty cardboard box or indeed their packaging that this could be stored in. Even the tubes tend to be cardboard, right? But yeah, there could be a kind of glue smell in there. And these bottles, I forgot to show you, but the levels, you could see the evaporation over time. The oldest one had the most kind of neck-filled drop. Had been more evaporation. So these seals are never truly airtight. And finally, modern, contemporary JW Black. Pack these all out of the way, and I'll give these a little shuffle around. Now, I know you might be thinking, he's not shuffling them around and able to confuse himself. Just try it. Just try it yourself. Put 3 whiskies in front of you, shuffle them around. You've lost. You don't have any idea which is which within just literally a few shuffles. Nothing at all. So I'm just going to leave these to sit and breathe for a little bit. And we'll talk about the next thing that I think that changes. The biggest change, perhaps, arguably, is our own personal whiskey journey. And as I talked about the relationships that we have with these individual whiskies, when I got into whiskey and I started to enjoy that Glengoyne 10-year-old back in 2005, I couldn't enjoy any peated whiskies. I found peated whiskies just too challenging. The most peated I could enjoy was perhaps a Highland Park. And then that all changed one day. My brother and I, we didn't have much money in a whiskey shop. We took our kids, our babies, out for a walk. And we ended up in a whiskey shop, and we literally had change on us only. Neither of us had a wallet or anything. And we saw a 20 cl bottle of Lagavulin 16, and it was affordable. It was like £13 or something like that. And the two of us said, yeah, let's get that, and we'll have it back. We're in a holiday accommodation. And we took it back, and we poured a dram, and maybe it was the environment, maybe it was the company, maybe it was the timing, maybe it was the fact that it was the only whiskey we had on hand at that time. It was wonderful. And we went out fishing that day. We had a great day fishing. We had a dram when we came back, again, wonderful. And we took the fish that we'd caught home with us and cooked it. And I'll never, ever forget for the rest of my life. Just before we went to bed that night, we finished that bottle, and I took my last sip of that Lagavulin 16, and I held it, and then I eventually swallowed it. I'm going back to 2009, and I can still taste, if I close my eyes and concentrate, I can still taste what I tasted in that Lagavulin 16 that night at that very specific moment. And sometimes that taste comes back from Lagavulin occasionally. And it's wonderful when it comes back. So we have these things. We always have to kind of stay open-minded and never ever say, I don't like, because everything changes. The whiskey changes, we change, and our relationship with the whiskey changes as well. I wonder how yours has changed. Simon Ray is saying, good to see you, Simon. He's saying your 2005 journey is definitely one I can relate to. Yeah. Glengoyne 10 to Lagavulin 16, it took me 4 years. And I spent I went the very next year, 2010, I went to Islay for my 40th birthday with a minibus load of us. I just had to be there because I was just loving. Suddenly, the peat wasn't strong enough. I just was chasing this kind of big peat hit all of a sudden. And I think if you're not careful, you can get stuck on Islay and you can struggle to come back. Jason Whiskey Wise is asking me to check the DMs. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, my friend. Gregor Patterson, I got Gregor. John as well. John Verstrata. I'm going to guess that's your name. Glad to be able to catch a stream. Are you looking at coming to Texas in October for another bastard gathering? I've heard it's the 12th of October. It's close to a disaster. That's our school holidays that week in Scotland. I'm talking to my wife about it just now. I would absolutely love to make it again, John. That would be wonderful. And if I will try my very, very hardest to be there. I'm not sure if I can manage it. John, thank you very much for the virtual dram, and I'm excited to hear that you're looking forward to me coming over as well. I would love to come back and have that experience again. Kresimir Jelcic. All these names are so difficult to pronounce. Kresimir is saying, hi Roy, you still have not responded to my mail. Please advise if you have other websites to purchase whiskey than Master of Malt and a Whiskey Exchange. Thanks. I don't recognize your name. I'm going to suggest that I don't have an email from you. But it's actually on my list of things to talk about, Kresimir. So I'll say thank you very, very much for the virtual dram. Thank you for getting my attention. And please send that email again, and I'll look out for it this time. Cheers, my friend. I'm loving the way the channel's going. I'm loving the success. I'm loving the community. I'm loving the engagement. But I am getting an unprecedented amount of direct messages, friend requests, emails. If this was my full-time gig, it would be no problem, but it's tough to manage in sometimes with family, with the day job, with my real job and things. It can be difficult. And I have to admit that it's possible that if a number of emails come in at the same time and I go in and I check them off and I leave a couple marked as unread to catch them when I've got a moment, it may be possible for me to forget or miss emails or messages. And I just apologize to anybody if that happens, and thank you for your patience. I will try and catch them. Anyway, in answer to your question, I would suggest to check also the Whiskey Barrel and Abbey Whiskey. That's just two other ones. There's a number of other websites that you can find to buy whiskey from, and you usually do a bit of a shop around and work out which is going to be the best value, and factor in postage costs and things like that as well. Mash and Drum has also bought me a virtual dram. Thank you very, very much, Jason. Doing a fantastic job with the channel out there. I'm absolutely loving it, Jason. Good job. And he's saying, cheers, Roy. Fantastic vPub. Thank you so much. Slant you, Jason. And it's Bourbonite are saying they've got to run. Roy, you're the best. So is everyone in here by Whiskey Drinkers. Thank you very, very much, Chad, for stopping by. And I'm glad that you stopped by when I was wearing the T-shirt as well. It's the first time I've worn this on a live, I realised tonight. Thanks, Chad. Nice of you to drop in. Jason Nuss is saying, you're good to see you, Jason. Your Lagavulin 16 makes me want to crack a bottle. Sitting here at work at 2:30 in the afternoon Pacific time. That's what I love about whiskey, its contribution to life experience. Couldn't have said it better myself, Jason. You've hit the nail on the head. When the Whiskey Rev was down at New Year and we were sipping whiskey together, it was lovely. I always enjoy sipping whiskey, but it's better when you're sipping whiskey with somebody else, especially if they appreciate whiskey like you do, or you can see that they are intrigued by whiskey, that they're curious about it, that they're enjoying whiskey like you do. It's wonderful. Christina Zarpoli is saying, everyone wants to be your friend. Your energy is so wonderful. Christina, in that case, people can't meet me in real life because I'll just be ever so disappointing. Thank you very much, Christina. It's always fantastic to have you in here. Whiskey Bowman is in. He's saying, Glasgow party, you say. That would be wonderful one day. And Connor Strang is in as well. Fantastic to see you, Connor. He's saying, not a fan of the Whiskey Barrel. They put new whiskies well above RRP that they know will be popular and will sell out in Master Malt and Whiskey Exchange, so they're the only option left. Yeah, it's very, very, you can quickly work out the cynical suppliers. You can quickly work out what places are chancing it a bit. And we don't need to engage with that. As a community, we get together and we can tell which spots are the best to buy things from. We're spoiled in the UK because we even have Amazon shipping to us. We have the local supermarkets and things like that that do the grocery shopping. You can literally get a bottle of whiskey thrown in with your groceries. So we are a wee bit spoiled in the UK. But there is that thing about a supply and demand. In some places, when the demand is high and the supply is low, the prices do creep up. And we quickly work out who those guys are. I have to say, I haven't found that very often with Master Malt and the Whisky Exchange. Jason Whiskey Wise is saying he's talking to everyone, he's not trying to get my attention. So yes, I think that whiskey, and it's funny because I did make a comment, and I apologise for the way I worded it. I'm very glad that Jason Coates is in tonight. I wonder also if Bobby Purnell is still in, because there was a couple of comments that they left based on it. And when I was talking about our relationship with whiskey changing, and I said, I don't think there's any place for deciding that you love one whiskey, and that's your whiskey, that's your kind of favourite, that's your go-to, and you won't touch anything else. That's what you're going to drink. I think that there's a mistake, and I use the word tribalism, and I'm not sure that was the right word, but I was trying to get across a point that, if you ever say no or I don't like to something, if you ever close your mind in whiskey, you can miss out. I think that sometimes you need to just always make sure that your mind is a little bit open to new opportunities or things that perhaps you feel like you might not like, especially if you have the opportunity for someone to give you them blind. I think it can be really eye-opening. And Jason made a comment in the comments, and I wrote it down. He said, so we're just discounting the fact that repeated good experiences with a brand create legitimate favourites. I think we absolutely agree, actually, Jason, and what I've talked about with Glengoyne and Lagavulin and lots of other things that I evangelise about is that, no, we are not discounting that. We're actually celebrating that. But I think it's a mistake if we say that we only drink Lagavulin and we don't touch Laphroaig. Oh, no, we don't like that Laphroaig. Because one day somebody's going to give you a Laphroaig and you're going to be saying, wow, that's amazing. What's that? You can have a favourite, and you can place that favourite, and you can have that as a reliable go-to thing. Maybe you put some trust in the brand even, and you just know that that's your thing. But I think if you close off other alternatives, or if you see, in the case of Lagavulin, like Ardbeg or a Laphroaig being in some way opposites, or in some way like the other team, that's what I was trying to get across, that I don't think that there's a place for that in whiskey, and we could often get caught out. And Bobby Purnell also made a similar comment. I think I've still got Bobby's comment. He says, Aquaviti, but don't you think the first whiskey that really grabs you sort of leaves an imprint and will always hold a spot of preference or significance for a typical whiskey drinker? Again, Bobby, absolutely, and I think we fully agree. As I've talked about Glengoyne and I've talked about Lagavulin just this evening, I think that's very much what's happened to me, and I get it fully. And I don't doubt, and I have shared it with everyone, and I hope people understand that when I evangelise about Lagavulin, Glengoyne, or any one of the distilleries that I've really connected with, that there is a huge element of me feeling comfortable in that environment. But I hope that I never ever discount tasting and trying all the other distilleries that are out there, because I'm only cheating myself, is my point. Vin is saying he's got to run as well. Thanks for joining for a little while, Vin. I know that you tend to turn in a wee bit early. He's saying enjoy the quiz. One day I'm going to convince you to stay for the quiz, Vin, and join in for it. Jason Coates is saying Aquaviti, of course, only is a bad direction to go. That wasn't the context of my comment. Excellent, Jason. I was absolutely certain of that. I just wanted to pick up and clarify that I hadn't kind of suggested that people having favourites were in some way flawed. That wasn't the spirit of my comments or words either. Bobby Purnell said, Aquaviti, one of the joys of Whisky Journey is experimenting. Absolutely, Bobby, and finding out just how to best enjoy a particular bottle. Rest, don't rest, water, come back in a month. Absolutely. I was talking about that very thing today, the ability that whiskey gives us to play with it and experiment with it, and it switches it up for us. We can literally have lots of different experiences with the same bottle. That's why I put that video out there a while back about 10 ways to enjoy whiskey more, literally with the whiskey you already have on hand, without having to buy new whiskies, new things you can do. Training C, you stars, you've bought me a virtual dram. Thank you so much from Canada. No comment or anything, guys. Thank you very, very much. I'm sure everyone knows Training C out there in Canada. This cleanly, she's lovely. Lovely. Maybe not the best dram to have, in fact, before I go into these Johnnie Walker Blacks. They've got, Training C have got a fantastic channel, lots of great laid-back fun. They do some really brilliant and unique things over there. If you've not checked out Training C, I suggest that you give them a wee look. They did do a bad thing to me recently, though. They put me up against the granddad of whiskey, and Ralphie. I'll probably get into trouble for calling him that, and I don't mean that from an age perspective. I mean in terms of where he's taken whiskey and YouTube whiskey specifically. But he picked Glenallachie 12 for his whiskey of the year last year. Really good dram. Very well presented as well, obviously right up Ralphie's street with, as he calls it, integrity bottlings. Really what we're all looking for, you know, the presentation and stated on the label what the presentation is as well. So good whiskey, and I'd put forward the Arran 14. Training C bought and reviewed both of them, but they did an uncorking. So yes, they're both fresh neck pours, as we're talking about tonight. And then they put a Ralphie versus Roy head-to-head, which was great fun, and I really enjoyed it. I won't spoil it for you who won in that head-to-head. But what I will say is that it wasn't Ralphie or Roy that was on test there, really. Kind of a wee bit. It was the whiskies that were on test. And I guess we were on test from the point of view of our favourites, or what our perspectives were on our favourite whiskey of the year. It was a good, fun video to watch. You should go and give that a watch and see who wins that battle, whether it was Ralphie, the master, or Roy, the relative noob. Whiskey Bowman is saying, Aquavite, they needed to let your Arran breathe. I would say that that's true of all the whiskies, but listen, we know that if somebody's going to review a whiskey, sometimes they'll review it from a sample, and we know it's a sample, and we have to apply our own rational intelligence. Sometimes they'll review it as an uncorking, so it's literally a tight neck pour that they're going to review. And sometimes they'll come back when there's a decent chunk out the bottle and review it at that stage. One of the reviewers, Foodquig, he actually goes back and reviews the same whiskey and tells you at what time point he's reviewing it. So he'll say, just as an example, Tomatin 12 after 3 months, which I think is fantastic, and acknowledging the fact that that whiskey is often changing quite significantly as well. Okay, just before I go on to these Johnnie Walkers, Skogsmard is saying, Aquavite, which Lagavulin is the one to go for? 8 or 16-year-old price difference here is negligible. Yeah, it's fairly negligible here as well, I would say, Skogsmard. I would say that if I'm in the mood to sit in my own and reach for a nice whiskey that I want to sit and kind of analyse and take apart, I would reach for the 8. I think right now I'm enjoying the 8 more, and at 48%, it's got a bit more bite and texture for me as well, where I am in whiskey. But one of the very few, there's probably about 3, 4, 5 bottles that I would always want to have in the collection, always want to have in the cabinet. And I would say that Lagavulin 16 is priority number 1 there. I always want to have that there. Like I said at the start of this stream, I'm coming up on an hour already. It's incredible. It's like going home. It's like having that anchor there and kind of remembering your whiskey journey and where you've come from and things. Okay. Graham Stewart is saying, 12, good to see you, Graham. 12-year-old Lagavulin all the way, absolutely, but that's cask strength. So just bear in mind that it's a cask strength version of Lagavulin if you're going in that direction. Okay, I have no idea which order these 3 Johnnie Walker Blacks are in. Just to remind you, I'm sipping something from late 70s, early 80s, something from late 80s, early 90s, and also a contemporary Johnnie Walker Black as well. Graham Young is saying he's sent across a virtual dram. Cheers, Graham, and he's asking me empties for recycling soon. Cheers, Graham, thank you. I have less empties. I only have a handful of empties right now, but I have a lot of bottles that are just about to give up the ghost. I would suggest I put one out in November, so I would say probably late February, March time, maybe March, I would say, Graham. I know it takes a while for those recycled reviews, but I feel like it has to be my bottle that I've drunk fully and shared fully myself, or a bottle that's been given to me that I can honestly stand up and say that I had enough of that to understand it fully from the start to the finish. Aquavite saying I call them calibration whiskies. It's the exact same word I use, Reb. It's like a calibrator before you start a flight or before you start tasting whiskey. Mine is Kalila 12, as you know. Yeah. For me, it's usually something like Glenmorangie 10 is a favourite, Glenfiddich 12 a favourite, but there's a few I've always got. That Glengoyne 14-year-old is fantastic just to kind of set you up for enjoying some whiskey. Our baggy's saying, really enjoying my Johnnie Walker 12-year-old. And Alan is saying, got to go, right, great show. We'll catch the rest on catch up. Fantastic, Alan. Thanks for joining in as well. And good to see the content that you're putting out as well. Just so many channels out there right now, it really is. But they all seem to be attracting an audience, which is really cool. It just shows that there is a huge community building here on YouTube, and it's fantastic. Okay, let's go into this first one. I'm just going to shut down my camera so I'm not tempted to glance up. I can't see the camera monitor now. It's only the chat I'm looking at. I'm not tempted to glance up and see the coloured dot that's on the bottom of the glass. Smell a wee bit of smoke on this. It's interesting. I'm not getting a lot of old bottle. It's not that obvious right now. It's actually a wee bit quieter than I imagined. Ben is in and he's bought me a virtual dram. Ben, I'm just about to sip one of these. He's saying, great showing tonight. Keep it up, Roy. Ben is a Single Malt Alliance from Instagram. Fantastic guy. Wonderful time spent with him last year at Glengoyne together. And he is also a brand ambassador in the States for the SMWS as well. Thank you very much, Ben. It's wonderful to have you supporting, and thank you very much for that generous virtual dram, my friend. Hope to see you this year. Let me know if you're coming over, will you? This actually smells really quite nice. I'm keen to try this. There's a wee bit of smoke in this. That's almost a wee bit kind of like a perhaps Highland Park level of smoke. Let's go with that. Let's go for another. Okay, this smells to me like an older bottling. Bit quiet again, soft. Maybe on the back of that Klein leash. Quite soft. Quite inviting as well. Sweet. Not much in the way of smoke. Curious. And the last one? Oh, wow. I'm going to struggle here. Now, I could have... when I opened one tonight, especially, I got that old bottle effect in full force. I could smell it. I really could. And now, I was looking for that to jump out, and it didn't happen. Just cover these for a little second. Our baggy's saying no smoke on mine. Wonder if that means now my contemporary one is green. So I guess, but you guys, I'll take the lid off that. You guys can probably see what colour that dot is, right? My contemporary one is green. That's the one that I would expect to maybe have the most obvious kind of smoke presence from. Donald Ransom saying, cheers, Roy. I also have Anchor Drams and totally get it. Green Spot, fantastic. Redbreast 12 and Bushmills 10 are mementos of where I've come from. Wonderful, Donald. Are you based in Ireland? No, you can't be. You're Canada, because you've bought me a virtual dram, you star. And thank you very, very much for that as well. Green Spot and Redbreast, as you know, are favourites of mine as well. Okay, let's have a wee sip. think that's an older bottling now that I taste it. Wow, it's much softer and sweeter and nicer than I expected it to be. Bear in mind that these two old JW Blacks I picked up at auction for £25 each. They were actually cheaper than the £28 I paid for the JW Black Contemporary. Now, I appreciate you could probably get that a wee bit cheaper than that, but I just had to kind of buy it locally, and that's how much I paid for it. But that's a nice dram, a really nice dram. And let's go for the next one. Wow. This is going to catch me out tonight. That's even better. It's brighter and fresher. But I think that's an older one as well. I can't cheat. I can't cheat. Okay. This one's slightly, this has got edges. So that's a different kind of sweetness altogether. The other two was a kind of like a toffee butterscotch sweetness, the first two. This one is sugar. It's like a light powdered sugar. None of these drams are awful, but at first pass, I think the last one I just sipped there potentially is the modern contemporary one. And the finish is a little bit more. The finish isn't as nice as the other two. Just a little bit of shorter, drier, and a kind of awkward bitterness sitting there now. So I wonder if that's the newer one. Yeah, that's an older one. So what I'm expecting here, late 70s, early 80s, what you've got is a scenario where there's still, bourbon casks are already established at that point in time, but there's still a lot of sherry casks in the supply chain, and lots of Scotch being matured, even grain whiskey being matured and refilled sherry. Now, I'm not suggesting that these would be fresh or particularly stellar sherry casks. They've been reused and reused and reused again and again and again. And just as sherry was dying off, and of course, 1983 came along and we couldn't bulk import sherry into the UK anymore. So the whiskey, we didn't have that access to sherry casks anymore after 83. But even before 83, sherry sales were declining. People were drinking less sherry, and the casks were becoming less available and more expensive. Round about Second World War, the cooperage unions in the States, they sign off an agreement to say that all bourbon will be aged in virgin oak only. The cask can only be used once. So the timing was perfect. You know, we had, as a whiskey, as a whiskey producing country, we suddenly had oak available from the bourbon industry to pick up where sherry was dropping off. So by the time the late 70s comes along, in the 80s, we're already extensively using bourbon, and I think probably, I don't know what the actual figures are, but more than 90% of the casks being bought and filled now are bourbon casks, I believe. Remember just how much of that, I'm not talking about malt, I'm talking about whiskey across the board. So I was expecting here to maybe get a bit more of a kind of sherry influence on the older ones. But the sweetness is like a toffee. It's like a butterscotch. This is a brighter one. I'm going to suggest this one is the 1990s one, the middle one. Whatever colour that is. Yeah. Certainly it's one of the older ones. And this one is the first of the three again. Puff of smoke again. That's gorgeous. It's a wee bit quiet. It's a wee bit flat. It's not bright. It's not fresh. It's not got lots of vibrancy as you would expect on something that's been in glass that amount of time. I could be talking out of my backside right now, right? You could be watching me drinking a contemporary Johnnie Walker Black Label and talking about it like it's something from the late 70s, early 80s. I'm certain this is the modern, this is the last one. This is the, so this should be, if I'm right, this should be a green dot. You can have a laugh at me otherwise. I'm fairly certain. I'm going to commit that that's a green dot. Please be green. Thank goodness for that. Tastes like a modern whiskey. Tastes much more like a, so the kind of sugar sweetness that I found in it, more than that kind of caramelly, butterscotchy sweetness, is kind of something that you probably would get a lot of in grain. And that's obvious here. When you drink it like that in contrast, it's really quite clear. So it's just a case of trying to work out which is the, there's a decade between these two oldies. One is probably 1980 era, the other one is 1990 era. I'm going to suggest that this one is the 1990, which would make this a red dot. Back to front. I got those two back to front. So the one that's quietest, sorry, the one that's got, it doesn't have the smoke on it, the one that's slightly brighter, the one that's slightly more vibrant, is the oldest, is this one. The one from late 70s, early 80s. Fruit, like a nice, sweet fruit. Kind of fruit, how can I, like a plum, like a plum type fruit, but sweet, ripe. Again, that puff of smoke again, and the old, this, what I thought was the oldest one, but this one with the puff of smoke on it is actually the one from the 1990s. This is fascinating. Fascinating to sip these like this. Now, I do a lot of this. I do a lot of this kind of tasting a contemporary whiskey versus an old. If I can get hold of an older version of something, I love to taste it back to back, and it's obvious. The difference is always obvious. But I've never done this before, and I've never done it with JW Black. Let's see what you think. So I got those two. I got these two confused. I got these two back to front. Like I say, there's a decade between these. This one is 10 years older than this one, but remarkably stable. The old bottle effect is nothing like what you get from this, and so many others that I have downstairs as well. That kind of fusty. We've got that word, that Scots word that we say, fusty. Okay, let's see what you guys have been saying, whether you've been having a kind of laugh at me trying to fathom that out there. I probably spent far too much time trying to work it out. Curtis Bailey's saying, that's a new name, Curtis. Good to see you. Do you think old bottle smell may be vapour that's possibly more prone to change over a period of years than the liquid itself? Ooh, and that's why you can detect it in the glass. You can't detect it in the glass as much. No, the old bottle effect that you get from the Deanston, for example, sat in the glass all night. I could have sat that there for an hour more, and I would have still got, it's very integrated into the whiskey, into the dram itself, Curtis. It's funny, I feel like, I wonder if there's anybody in the chat that knows what I'm talking about. And Jason Whiskey Weiss is saying all that Convalmore and those older bottlings. You know, it's possible. I can't imagine there's much, but I'll bet you there's more malt in the older ones than there is in the modern one, perhaps. Everyone is saying, do we know if JW blends from different years use different source whiskies? Absolutely. And I think that's why a lot of these kind of these distilleries that make mostly for blends are, they try to make a very, very similar profile. You know, rather than making a, you know, 20 million litre distilleries all over the place, they've got 2 or 3 distilleries already, and they can have them making things that are very, very similar. In the case of Diageo, if you get to know the Flora and Fauna range, you might understand what I'm speaking about. There's a lot of that range that has a very, very similar kind of family, almost like a DNA through it. You know, it's very, very similar in style. So I would say that, yeah, they're able to switch it up. And a blender, as he's putting together batch after batch or batch, his goal is not to try and maintain the same shopping list recipe. His goal is the end product. His goal is to try and make a consistent product. And he'll use whatever stocks he's got available to try and put out, he or she, sorry, of course. They'll put out whatever stocks are available to them in order to try and make a consistent product each time. So they will probably be ambivalent sometimes to what the distillery is. Jason Coates is saying toffee and butterscotch versus sugar sweetness, spot on. I'm doing a side-by-side along with you. Thank you, Jason, you star. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you've managed to, you've popped them both. And I wonder if you get on the newest one, Jason, as well, then kind of that just slightly more, I don't want to be negative, but there's a kind of chemically, a chemical ethanol jagged edge. I mean, it's not unpleasant. It's still a nice whiskey, but I think the older one been much softer and much more integrated. So, I mean, I would be very happy just sitting and drinking JW Black. I really don't mind it at all. Chris Bean is saying, damn, I'm late. Don't worry about it, Chris. No problem at all. You're in time for the quiz. Everyone is saying, do we know? I've already answered that one, everyone. Thank you. Reb is saying, most transport casks pre-1981 used in the whiskey industry for blends were old refill butts. Not much sherry influence. They didn't tear down bodegas, though, Reb. They didn't tear apart Solera systems to ship sherry. When they emptied the Solera and they cast it for transport, you're absolutely right, into transport casks. Most transport casks for the whiskey industry were blends were old refill butts. Not much sherry influence. Yeah. I mean, it is a bit of a myth, you know, this idea that, you know, I mean, whiskey, for as long as we've been tasting whiskey, you have to go back really, really into the deep and distant past, I think. Or occasionally you do find there was a sliver of stocks that were poured from really active, really fresh, really bright sherry casks. Most of whiskey that was aged in the industry for years would have been transport casks, I guess. They would have been refilled in terms of reused in the sherry world. And eventually when it came into Scotch, we'd have reused them and refilled them until they were pretty much exhausted. You've got to remember that until the 1980s, I mean, single malts weren't really a thing. They were really, really, I mean, they're niche now, but it was super, super niche back then. And everybody was maturing for blends. And the sherry butts were often exhausted. Trying to see saying Aquaviti, love how blind tasting messes with your mind. Absolutely. It's tough as hell, especially when you're doing it live, right? McCann Finer Rare saying, do you know how the E150 policies of producers have developed in the last decades? I don't know. Some producers use it, some producers don't use it, and other producers use it cynically. That's all I'll say. We know who they are. We don't need to talk about it. But what's interesting is over 40 years of product. I'm going to struggle to hold up 3 of these, but I'll give it a try. Look how close these 3 whiskies are in colour. You know, despite different stocks being available from different distilleries and different casks and different profiles and everything. But, you know, your man in the street who drinks Johnnie Walker Black Label and that's his bag, that's his thing, he doesn't want that colour to change. Every time he goes back for JW Black, he wants it to be the same colour. But it's easy to see how that policy can be cynically employed. That's why community is good. Jason is saying so much more grain shown in the modern one for sure. That's what you'd expect, I think, if we're honest. And And Richie, that's an interesting question. Is there a difference in viscosity between the different JW Blacks? I didn't notice. I didn't notice, Richie. This has given me the smoke again. Is that the one I always said? Yep. None of them are particularly heavy or weighty or oily. I don't think. That's a lovely dram. This one, the 1990s one, is a peach. Appearing in a blind challenge, an Aquavite blind challenge soon, for sure. It's not an unpleasant texture, but it's not like mouth coating. Calling it thin would be a bit rude. Mm-hmm. I think all of them are pretty similar, honestly. The finish on the newest one is probably the most disappointing thing of it all. Just as it just finishes so much, brings in that kind of awkward bitterness. Okay, let's see. Whiskey Radar is saying, isn't it true that in the 80s, with all the recessions going on, distilleries were sometimes forced to go for better quality, even sherry casks, when customers were more careful spending cash? Back in the 80s, they had so much. They talked about the whiskey loch. They had such a backstock that, especially when they were putting together, well, even the blends. If you taste blends from going back 80s, 70s, they're fantastic whiskies. They really, really are. And I don't know if that's because of what they were putting together at the time, or whether it's because the chemical soup that is whiskey has really settled and integrated while it's been in the glass. Obviously, it doesn't age in the glass, but it changes. But I would suggest that it would seem that they were able to draw on just deeper, richer, better stocks in the past. You've got to just try it yourself and make up your own minds about these things, because at the end of the day, we can't have the past. We can only find the good stuff that exists here in the present and celebrate that. The Whiskey Bowman says, you've just let slip to Drew what he's getting. Drew is in possession of a set of blind whiskies, Whiskey Bowman. Don't worry. He's already got them. And I can confirm that he does not have a JW Black in that lineup. Skogsmard is saying, the 15-year-old Bowmore Sherry Cask finish is labelled as darkest, yet it contains E150A. No doubt. Blind tasting is what led me to rediscover Canadian whiskies, says Donald Rance a few years ago. It really surprised me. Blind tasting, I'm obsessed with it. I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I find it fascinating when we strip away our prejudice. Anyway, let's get on with things. It's just after 11 o'clock, so I'm an hour and 15 minutes into the stream, a wee bit beyond that. I've got any housekeeping to take care of. A lot of people have been asking me why I'm getting down thumbs just now. A lot of it's because I gas and I chat and I gas and I chat and I monologue, and people come on and they wonder what the hell this is about. But honestly, the down thumbs, I'm probably not getting enough. Down thumb is a fantastic metric that as your channel grows, that perhaps YouTube is throwing in a bit of support and promoting you on the homepage or in suggested videos, and you're able to cast your net a bit further. And as you cast your net a bit further, you're reaching out to people that have never engaged with you before. They've never invested time in you, and they come on and they look and they don't like you for your looks or your music or your crap that you talk about, whatever it is. And sometimes they choose to leave a wee message as a down thumb. They won't give you feedback most of the time. But the thumbs down are a great metric that your cast is being, your net is being cast a bit wider, that you are reaching a wider audience. And there's a lot of channels out there that'll tell you that if you're not hitting 10% down thumbs on your videos, you're not doing it right. You're not getting your content under people's noses. So I think that that's a lot of what it's about. And I don't really care about the down thumbs. The only thing I care about is that oftentimes, I'm not sure why, I don't, it's nice to have feedback. That's why negative comments are awesome. Negative comments are gold, even the trollish, rude ones. because your community are fans and they support you and they like what you're doing and they like being part of it. Some of them will give you constructive and positive and negative feedback, which I'm always very appreciative of. But even the negative comments, you can take things from. But it's just something that's going to happen. Everybody suffers from down thumbs, and we all have learned to just not care. I remember the first down thumb I ever received, and it was in October 2016. 2007, no, 2016, 2017. I'm lost now. I'm 2 years in 2019. So yeah, 2017 October was my first down thumb, and I remember thinking, why is somebody not? But of course, my reach, my traffic was so small back then that the only people that were finding me were true whiskey heads, people that were searching for that very, very specific style of content, and they were happy when they found it. So they weren't down thumbing it, even if they didn't like it. They were glad, I suppose, that it existed. So as you reach more and more people that are perhaps less specifically interested in the content you're providing, you generate a few more down thumbs. So don't worry about it. First, Phil Whisky, fantastic name, Phil. Super to have you in. It looks like a new name. He's saying he just thumbed up. Yes, of course, the thumbs up helps. And I've just had 2 down thumbs coming in as well, as if to hammer home the point. When I first glanced across there, that was sitting at 0, and now it's got 2. Thank you very much for your support. So I just wanted to mention that and talk about it and say that, you know, it's not really, I guess it's just a thing. Somebody's just mentioned as well, 7,000 subscribers is very close. That's amazing to me. It really is amazing. And you know, it's inevitable. I can't even imagine, I can't picture in my head what 7,000 people look like. But that's just the people that subscribe. The views are, I'm approaching, I don't know, 400,000 views. It's inevitable that some people are gonna do it. Graham Young says, here's a negative comment. I don't enjoy that plant and you're left. Do you know what that plant is fantastic for? The white balance. Just having that green in there makes a wee difference to me. And it's always in my office. It's always there. One day I'll have an office, Graham, and I'll be able to build a studio. Rather than this small box room here up in my loft, I'll be able to build a proper studio and have a proper set. But I think I'll bring that plant in. Richard is saying, Aquaviti, thank you for the videos. I always learn something. Richard, that's another new name. It's fantastic. You're very, very welcome. Jimmy Legg is in. Good to see you, Jimmy. Good to have you in. Love Street, that's a new name. Ebhead, great example of Springbank. As long as you put out good product, Springbank puts out fantastic product, full of character. Kenneth Kennelty is saying, if you give a thumbs down, you should pitch a bitch why. Yeah, I know, but it's just easy in modern times just to say, yeah, I don't like that and just move on. Don't like that and move on. Some people, you know, have clicked on it by mistake and they'll leave a little kind of smelly marker behind. Again, it's another metric. And Jez is saying, thank you for your whiskey evangelism and shout out to the London Whiskey Club. More than half of our club members have joined the club via Aquaviti. So here, cheers to you, Roy. Jez, I have to say that was amazing to me when I heard that. When you guys were up visiting me last year and I was speaking to you and James, you told me that that club was founded out of the chat in this channel. I've been speaking to Multi-Haggis Muncher recently up in the northeast and up in Aberdeen, and he's putting together a whiskey club right now. And I've told him I'm happy to shout him out and support him. If there are people up in the northeast, get in touch with Multi-Haggis Muncher. He's in the chat here. He's on Instagram as another name I can't remember now. But you can get in touch with me if you're in the northeast of the country in Scotland. He's interested in putting a club together there. And just recently I was speaking to somebody else. It's very, very early stages, but they have the same idea that they'd like to put together a club in their area. I'm happy. That would be wonderful if I could do that, if I could shout out people that are close to each other that can meet up and hook up. That would be fantastic. Diogo, I met you in Germany last year. Diogo, great to welcome you in here. He's saying, hi guys, finally here. Good to see you. Sid Martin is saying, if you don't want thumbs down, get Gillette involved. Yeah. Well, I mean, I can switch it off, right? I can just switch off how many ups versus downs that I have. Somebody's taken a down thumb away. You guys are awesome. So I'm now down to 1 down thumb. Nigel Slynn is saying, I love that plant, Roy. Just needs a pet koala. Well, I might get something like that. That might be cool just for you, Nigel, one week. I might clip on one of the kids' koalas. And Nicholas is saying, love the tree. It gives a great colour palette to the room. I kind of like it for that as well. It just kind of gives it a wee bit of... Otherwise, I just have... Look at what's behind it. I've got a white wall heater, a radiator. Multi-Agus Muncher Matthew is in. He's saying in Fraserburgh. So yeah, he's interested. Matthew, can you put in what your Instagram handle is? And then perhaps people are able to direct message you through that as well. Donald Rance is saying, Aquavidi, quick question. Talisker Storm, a good fit for a Bamor and Ardbeg fan. I liked the Storm much better than the Sky. I wasn't impressed with the Sky. I'm not a huge Talisker fan. The 57 degrees north was tremendous. I'm desperate to try the 8-year-old. I've got uncorked 8-year-old there that I haven't opened yet. The Talisker Storm, it's often at a very good price. And I'd say, yes, decent. But for a Bamor or an Ardbeg fan, probably not. Bamor is a kind of richer, slightly more peaty experience. Ardbeg is way out there. It's kind of bold, vibrant, citric, fresh peat. If you're looking for something to buy, a Bamor or an Ardbeg fan, if they don't have any experience of Lechic 10, that's reasonable money. It's a similar price to Talisker Storm, and it'd be a great recommendation. Kalila 12, if they haven't experienced Kalila 12, or any of the bourbon, for me, this is my opinion, any of the bourbon cask Kilchoman are wonderful. And Multi-Agus Muncher Matthew is saying that I should have remembered that. He's called the Worm Tub on Instagram. So you can get in touch if you're in Aberdeen or northeast of the country, near Fraserburgh. You can get in touch with Matthew that way. Okay, let's get this quiz on the go. Do we still have Jason in tonight? I noticed the Rev hasn't appeared tonight. I know he had something on earlier and he said he was going to try and make it a bit later. But the Rev is missing in action again, which is absolutely fine. Wow, is that another super chat I missed from Curtis Bailey? Thanks, Roy. I'm quite new to whiskey, and this is my first time in the chat, but I've been using your channel as a resource to up my whiskey IQ. How's that working out for you, Curtis? I hope it's going okay. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to raise my favourite of these 3 JW Blacks to you. It's the one with the least in it now. I've obviously been enjoying it, which is the 1990s one. I'm going to say, Curtis, thank you for your virtual dram. Cheers, my friend. Christina Zarpoli is saying, all hail Ardbeg. Absolutely, Christina, and it should be celebrated, the Ardbeg. The 10-year-old is my favourite, 46%, always reasonable, decent whiskey experience. There's a couple of them that I haven't connected with, but yes. Chris Beaton is saying, Kalila 12 is a delight. It's so understated and just kind of flies under the radar all the time. We always talk about how under-celebrated Kalila 12 is. And if you ever doubt that, because it's not obvious, it's not an obvious hook in any direction. Yes, it's very peaty. It's just very delicate and classy and clean and just nice. But like I say, if you ever doubt it, pour it blind. Pour it up against an Ardbeg 10. Pour it up against a Lagavulin 8, for example. And even if you don't pick it as your favourite, you may just. But if you don't, at least you'll appreciate just how good that Kalila 12 is. And Aquaviti saying Curtis is saying it's working exceptionally. Well, good. I'm able to bring something, and that's something that's a pleasure for me. I'm going back to whiskey school. There's news. And the reason that I've got this Lefroy 10 over my shoulder here is that I brought that back from whiskey school on Monday night. John Lamond is John Lamond, sorry. I keep pronouncing his name wrong. John Lamond is a guy's keeper of the Quaich in Scotland, and he's been teaching whiskey classes for years and years and years. I've known about his classes, and I managed to get a cancellation, and I slipped into a class that's going out on Monday night now, 8 weeks at whiskey school, and he teaches all the basics in this kind of this Scotch whiskey trail. I forget what it's actually called now. and it's a kind of it's not quite beginner's level. I would say that I can already sense that he's teaching, for example, he's teaching bar staff, he's teaching people from Auchentoshan, he's teaching people from Edrington in the group. They're all sitting in there. There's some whiskey kind of enthusiasts in there as well, which I would include myself. I was late to the class. I made a mistake and I was on the train and I was late to the class. And I went to try and find a seat, panicking to try and find a seat. And the only seats that were left were right up at the front of the class. So I had to kind of do the walk of the shame down to the front and sit right at the front, right in front of the teacher, John himself. But I really enjoyed it. And I can see that even although so much of it I'm already very confident and comfortable in, it's nice to get his perspective, and it's really nice for his knowledge and his experience and his wisdom and depth of knowledge to be filling so many gaps for me and making connections that I haven't made in the past before. So I'm going to keep you up to date with that, because what I want to do is go through this course and then attend the advanced whisky school as well, and it's in a Good Spirits company in Glasgow. It's very easy to attend and very good value as well. Jordy V, thank you, my friend. He's saying, first live here, love your videos, enjoy this small dram. Thank you very, very much. Jordy's saying, I'd recommend any method in Madness, although the pot still chestnut finish is my favorite. Yes, I was sent, was it Stephen Reynolds that sent me a sample of the chestnut finish method Madness? It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Very nutty. Chestnuts maybe put that in my head, but I remember the spice that I got from it. And I remember texting Stephen as I was sipping it and telling him how much I enjoyed it. It was good, but I love pot still whiskies in general. I've only tried a couple of the Method and Madness series though. The Whiskey Niche is in. Good to see you. It looks another new name. Port Charlotte is intense peat in my opinion. Tad too much peat for me. Sometimes it can be. I'm enjoying a Port Charlotte right now, the cognac cask. I had one of those this week and really enjoyed it. The Rock Gut review. Good to see you. And again, great stream, Aquavita. I've got to head home from work, so I'll catch the rest later. Not staying for the quiz then, Rock Gut. No worries, you can catch it on the replay. And hopefully, if I've done my job properly, this will be timestamped so you can pick it up on the replay. That's really, really nice. This bottle isn't getting given away in a hurry. I can share that with people and I can see people are going to really enjoy that. This one's a wee bit quieter, a wee bit softer, a wee bit more bright fruit in there, kind of that the kind of fruity thing, I kind of almost like a plum note I picked up on it. Still very, very nice. And the new one, like I say, a perfectly good sipper, a perfectly good mixer. It's not expensive, not cheap either. It's still kind of their premium blend. But, you know, if you're in a pinch, there's nothing wrong with a bottle of Black Label, I can tell. For sure. Jason, if you're ready for the quiz, I am, my friend. Let's get it underway. Did I speak about everything? I didn't mention t-shirts. I get time to talk about t-shirts. I might have told you last week. I did tell you last week I had an accident with t-shirts that I was pulling my monitor forward and I knocked my whiskey all over my big flat box of Aquavita shirts. Now, not all of them got the whiskey on them, but I was paranoid that they all had the smell of of whiskey. So I sent them off to be professionally cleaned, and they came back and they're nice and crisp. So I won't be in a hurry to do t-shirts again. I did it because people were asking, and I've got about 22 or 23 left. I don't have any XXLs. I've got some XLs in all the sizes down. Here they are here. This is the grey one, and the navy one. And both of them has the kind of, this is the vPub compass on the outside and just some Aquavita things on the inside. This is the standard logo on the sleeve, this little highlight on the sleeve, and they've all got a logo on the nape as well. These will not be back in stock in a hurry, and if they do, they won't look like that. So, and it won't be for some time. So if you want these, I can't sell them as new, but I'm going to sell them. I'm going to keep the price the same, but I will ship you a nice tasty dram along with the t-shirt. So get in touch with you direct. Christina's saying, great shirts, love mine. Do you have an Aquavita shirt, Christina? I think you do. That reminds me, that's the gent shirts I'm talking about. I've still got plenty of untouched by any whiskey. They've not been baptized. I can baptize them if you want, but I have women's shirts as well, and small, medium, and large. I've still got those in both colours. But the gent shirts, I've only got about 20, 22, 23 left. small, medium, large, and extra large. If you want them, reach out to me quickly. Because I think in future I'm going to try something different. Let me show you something that I think is very cool. I don't know if you've heard of Urban Pirate, but this print over my shoulder, the bottles of Scotland, the Scottish whiskey bottles, are a print by Urban Pirate. And he also does a lot of apparel, clothing, and things like that as well. The pirate himself is a great designer. I love his work. And you've often seen me wearing a number of Urban Pirate designs. He presented this to me at the Whisky Club earlier this week. Let me just say thank you to Sillet Bang. He's saying, can I be a YouTube leech anymore? It's always free. Any donations that you give to me are utterly optional. You can still enjoy the content. You really don't need to, but it's very, very welcome when you do. Sillet Bang, thank you very much. He's saying, great stuff, Roy. Always educational. Keep the dreaming coming. Drams up. Cheers, Sillet Bang. One of my favourite names as well. Fantastic. Thank you very much, my friend. Toby Field is saying he's set a trend, a shirt and a dram by post. That's right. It was Toby and I. It was because I was looking at Toby's shirt that the shirts were out here from the cupboard. They were sitting there, and that's how they ended up with the whiskey on them. And they were covered in plastic, which is so frustrating. And I took the plastic off to find his size, and so they were sitting exposed. It was unbelievable. So, but they've all been, as you see, they look nice and crisp and clean. But I can't consciously sell them as new anymore. So I'll send you a dram if you want it. Christina's saying, you bullied me into one when I got my coin. Wink. Oh, I think I did. That wasn't bullying. That was just clever salesmanship, Christina. I think I remember that discussion, and I did feel a wee bit of guilt after it. Nicholas, but as long as you like it, that's the thing. And as long as you're getting some value out of it, you're able to wear it. Nicholas Butt is saying, where would one find your merch? I don't have a store. Of my website is still utterly dormant. You can just direct message me. I have a PayPal me /Aquavite is the easiest way to pay. Leave your address details and things like that. But contact me, send me an email, and I'll work with you to make sure that, because there are some places obviously that I can't legally send you a dram. Could be a problem, but I'll work with you to work a way around that. Jason Coates is saying, Urban Pirate shirts are nice. I have a couple. Well, let me show you this. He presented this to me at the club, the Whisky Club. The Pirate is a member of our club, the Pirate himself. Awesome guy. And he presents me with this and says, thanks for the inspiration. Look at this. Awesome, right? Now, it says Aquavite with a U, so it doesn't use the kind of Latin styling that I've got. But he said that, it was the kind of Aquavite, the Water of Life thing, that he's got a Firewater one and he's got a Water of Life one, and that's the Water of Life one as well. So you can buy those. He's only just released those in recent weeks. And just a few weeks before that, he also released his Ushkabe series as well. This is the black one, which is peat smoke. He's got a Stars and Stripes type styled blue one, which is bourbon. And he's or bourbon cask, because it's still Ushkabe. And then he's got a kind of maroon sherry cask version as well. Now, there's nothing in it I don't get. There's no agreement. There's no deal. There's no money changes hand or anything. The Pirate is just a great guy, a great designer, a member of our Whisky Club with a great business going as well. And he's really passionate about what he does. All his shirts come with this cool little thing on the nape as well. He tends to throw in little kind of candies and badges and stickers and confectionery in the shipment as well. Just a nice touch. And when you connect with a company like that and you like it, like it's just like, for me, anything in whiskey, when you find something that's good, I think it deserves to be talked about. That's why I like talking about the Pirate and what he does. And I'm glad that so many of you have managed to find his stuff. Alchemist is saying, no more t-shirts. Shame that they're great. What about socks? Also, any new coins for 2019 planned? Batch 2 coins are already ordered. The design is fixed, solid. Also a special treat for my patrons as well. That's already underway. I'm just waiting on some shipping and tracking information on those. Probably February time before any more announcements of that comes out, Sevi. But it's well underway. Kevin Grant is in. I hope you were here earlier, Kevin. I shared the Deanston 8-year-old gift that you gave me. Do you think whiskey produced before 2000 will be as big an impact to new whisketeers? Or is the newer whiskey the one that could convert them? Oh, absolutely. Any contemporary whiskey. Any contemporary whiskey. You just have to be careful always with ABV. I think you can switch people off if you burn them out too much. People are screaming for the quiz now. And Diogo has just sent me an email. I understand what you're saying, Kevin. So you're thinking about the older ones is going to bring even more curiosity because of the historical aspect perhaps, and how much whiskey has changed. But I think you can quickly overwhelm somebody that's just new into whiskey. Get them tasting. Get them understanding what is unique about whiskey, what nothing else can offer like whiskey can offer, that spectrum of flavour, that just incredible engagement. Okay, I'm going to run over 2 hours unless I run through this quiz like crazy tonight. Let's give it a go. So I pull this up. Okay. Am I still sharing? Let me make sure. Good. Okay, this should work. Let's see if it works. Let's see if I can pull the quiz up for you guys. Yes, seems to be working. Okay, this is multiple choice, of course. The same as always. 3 options. I'm going to go as fast as I can tonight to try and keep it under 2 hours, but I'll probably fail. But it also helps you from Google and keep your own scores. At the halfway point, I'll ask you what your scores are and just see how we go on tonight. I think this is a tricky one tonight, if I'm honest, but let's give it a go as well. Remember that it's more about sharing the kind of education and curiosity behind whiskey as much as anything. It's not really to test people. Honest. Okay, here's the quiz. Let's go. Question 1. When was the proof declaration of alcohol abandoned in favour of ABV? Now, of course, here I'm talking about the UK and Europe, and internationally, actually. I know in the States they still have their own proof measurement, which is exactly double ABV at 60°F. But I'm speaking about internationally. When was ABV adopted in favour of the old imperial proof? Was it the 1st of January 1980, B 1972, or C 1988? 1st of January being in there is redundant. Is it A 1980, B 1972, or C 1988? I think I let this slip when I was talking about the Johnnie Walker Blacks earlier. So let's see if anybody was listening. Remember, I'm back at whiskey school now, so I'm back in the swing of things, listening and taking notes and things. Forgot a pen for my first night at whiskey school, and I was too embarrassed to ask to borrow one. So I was trying to just kind of, any new things that I learned, I was trying to mentally remember. Most people think it's A. Few people guessing A. Arnie's in. Good to see you, Arnie. William Slattery, fantastic. Pegglestrand, fantastic. Josh is in, wonderful. Mark Padley, Chris Banks Wildlife, Frank Harding, all you guys have been in. Wonderful to have you all again. But you all seem to think it's A. Let's see if you are correct. Proof declaration, as I said earlier in the stream, was indeed adopted on the 1st of January in 1980. Now, it would have been displayed on bottles before that because they would have known that this was coming in, but that was when the legal date of implementation was. Let's go on to question 2 real quick. This is a really cool quote. I love this quote, but who said it? And the quote is, "The transformation of new spirit into mature whiskey is as miraculous as the change from caterpillar to butterfly. And the chrysalis is the oak." Who said those wonderful words? Great analogy. Was it Bill Lumsden? Was it Jim Swan? Or was it David Stewart? A, Bill Lumsden, B, Jim Swan, or C, David Stewart? Bill Lumsden, of course, is the Glenmorangie. I don't know what his title is actually, but he's like head of whiskey. He's certainly their master blender. Jim Swan is Dr. Jim Swan, a famous consultant involved in so many distilleries up and down the country. Really great loss. He died, I think, at the start of last year. Great loss to the industry, Dr. Jim Swan. And David Stewart is obviously of Grant's, Glenfiddich, Kinninvie and Balvenie fame. Probably the guy with the longest career in the industry. Everybody is saying B. Everybody seems to think B. A few people guessing it's David Stewart. Think it's C. Tony Evans, C. Arnie Tiger, C. Lots of people thinking it's David Stewart of Grants. Many people saying B. Let's have a quick look. That analogy was actually Dr. Jim Swan's analogy. Sad loss to the industry, but he leaves a very, very powerful legacy. Let's go on to question 3. A standard remade hogshead or hoggy holds how many litres? Obviously, I'm talking about a barrel, the hogshead barrel. How many litres does it hold? Is it A, 225, B, 250, or C, 275? Now, I know that there are odd kind of sizes occasionally, but I'm speaking about a standard hogshead. How many litres do we expect to see in a standard hoggy? Stuart Burness is saying Penderyn will miss him. No doubt, so many distilleries relied heavily on Dr. Swan's input. I think this is a giveaway for most of you knowledgeable folks. Everybody seems to think it's B. Let's see if most of you are correct. A standard remade hogshead or hoggy holds 250 litres. If you answered B, give yourself a point as we move on to question 4, which is the pictorial question. So what happens is that normally an American standard barrel is 200 litres. It will come here. Normally they will stay intact nowadays because coopering is more expensive than shipping. So they can ship air in a 200 litre ASB. But what happens often, especially when they come over in shooks, they were broken down into shooks, and they would remake 5 American standard 200 litre barrels into 4 250 litre hogsheads. So hoggies were just that wee bit bigger. So let me show you this image, and you'll recognise it immediately. Of course, that's Craigellachie Bridge in Speyside. But the question here is, what's the closest distillery to this famous location in Speyside? This is like the photo opportunity that everybody takes when they're up in that region. But I'm asking, which distillery is closest? Is it Macallan, Aberlour, or Craigellachie? A, Macallan, B, Aberlour, or C, Craigellachie? Don't know if I need to leave that image up this time. I think, obviously it's Craigellachie Bridge, built by Thomas Telford, I think in the early 19th century, still standing, still strong, doesn't carry the heavy traffic anymore. In fact, I think it's closed to traffic. I think it's just pedestrians and bikes now. They've obviously got a new road and a new bridge in there now. Everybody saying A, a couple of people saying C. Gregor is saying B. Whisky Ace is in. Good to see you. Saying hi, Aquaviti. Hi, right back at you, Whisky Ace. Good to have you in. Lisa Cooper, makeup artist. Wow. Nice to see you in, Lisa. William Slattery, fantastic. Paul Gibbs, my friend Paul. How are you, Paul? Good to see you in, my friend. Paul is saying A for Macallan. Let's see if Paul and everybody else is correct by thinking that the closest distillery to Macallan is, sorry, the closest distillery to Craigellachie Bridge is Macallan. It is, in fact, Craigellachie. Craigellachie Distillery is the closest distillery to Craigellachie Bridge. Now, I know that you think that that's probably a bit of a double bluff going on there. Connor's trying to remember which distillery we were going to when we stopped there. He's speaking to Jez, yeah. So, but you could have been going honestly to any of those. And so dense is the distilleries around that area that there's just so many. You're just driving along a road, you look to your left and your right, and there's other distilleries. So it's kind of difficult. But that's closest either as the crow flies or indeed by road, I think, as well. Okay, let's go on to question 5 and say Glasgow's Clydeside Distillery, brand new, is making a typical lowland style. So that's its goal right now, is to make a typical lowland style whiskey. And it's managed by a man from where? Is it A, Islay, B, Speyside, or C, Glasgow? Now, I'll tell you who this guy is after the question, but where is this guy making the typical lowland style? Is he a man from Islay? Is he a man from Speyside? Or is he a man from Glasgow? I've been down to that distillery a couple of times. Quite a magical wee spot, actually. Yet to do a tour. And I wonder if that's simply because it's in my backyard. It's funny how I'm drinking the old JW Black in preference to the new one. Okay, this is a wee bit all over the place by the looks of things. A, B's and C's flashing up in front of me. Lots of people. Austin Huang, that's a new name, Austin. Welcome in. Lots of people all over the place. Baldy Raj, that looks like a new name. DDI Network is back in. Fantastic to see you again. Wonderful to have you back. Dawei is in as well. Fantastic to have you. But yeah, a wee bit all over the place. Let's go and see. They are at Clydeside Distillery making a Lowland style managed under a man from Islay. Alistair MacDonald is the manager of Clydeside Distillery, ex-Auchentoshan, I think. But before that, he was involved at Bamore, I believe, in Islay. I think he was an engineer or something before he was managing Auchentoshan. So there you go, a man from Islay is now in charge of things at Clydeside Distillery. Fantastic. Question number 6. Which of these distilleries was not built in the 1970s? I'm going to give you 3 distilleries. I just need you to point me to the one that's not a 1970s distillery. Is it A, Balmenic was not built in the 70s, B, Athrusk was not built in the 70s, or C, Breval was not built in the 70s? A, Balmenic, B, Athrusk, C, Breval. Which was not built in the 70s? Let's see who's doing well at the halfway point. Multi-Haggis Muncher is doing well, 4 out of 5. Any of you? Jimmy Jazz, Daniel Vermaas, Nicholas Burt, all 4 out of 5. Love Street, 4 out of 5. Mark Padley, 4 out of 5. DDI Network is shouting woohoo, 4 out of 5. Arnie Tiger, 4 out of 5. Fantastic. Maybe it's not as difficult as I thought, or maybe you're just a lot more informed than I gave you credit for. Diogo is saying 4 out of 5. Well done, Diogo. Well done, all of you. Great stuff. Let's see which of these was not built in the 70s. It was, of course, Balmenic. Athrusk and Breval were built in the early 70s, 73 and 74. And Balmenic was built in 1824, the first year of the Whisky Licensing Act. I'm getting very tongue-twisted tonight. Act came in 1824. That's the year that Balmenic was built. Jimmy Jazz is saying just good guessing. Well, that's at least half the game, Jimmy, sometimes, right? Follow the crowd, guess well, and know your stuff, right? Let's go on to question 7. Which distillery did not get a dedicated Game of Thrones release? Which of these 3 didn't get their own whiskey in Game of Thrones? Was it A, Cragganmore, B, Glendullan, or C, Cardew? This distillery did not feature in one of the recent Game of Thrones releases. It's of course not been released in Europe yet until middle of next month, but the States have already had it. A, Cragganmore, B, Glendullan, or C, Cardew? A's, B's, A's, B's. Philip Sabella is saying, Roy, I recently discovered your channel. Would love to join you in a live stream. Sadly, I can't stay. Really love your videos. Thank you. Philip, don't worry about it. It's always available for you on the replay, and I'm just glad that you're enjoying the content, my friend. And a thank you to everybody who is supporting by subscribing and watching. Like and comment, please. It helps us all. It's fantastic to have you all here. Nicholas Burt is saying, yay, one I actually know. Fantastic. Well, let's see. The release, the distillery that didn't get a Game of Thrones release was Cragganmore. Glendullan had the Singleton of Glendullan, and Cardew, of course, had their Gold Reserve. Let's go on to question 8. It's a whiskey YouTube question. Foodquig's Whiskey channel recently had a viral surge based around the review of which malt? It's crazy. Foodquig went from 1,200 subs or that order to about, I think at last look, he had broken 6,000 subs. Quite fantastic for a great guy. And Foodquig has been doing whiskey videos for a long, long time. He's been doing videos on YouTube for general for even longer. But he's really, really unique that's out there. And I think that he really deserves it. I hope it remains a positive thing for him. Last I spoke to him and checked in with him, he was very much enjoying it. And he's currently looking forward to a trip to Scotland. And maybe if the planets align, I'll have the opportunity and the privilege to buy that guy a dram when he's over here in Scotland. But Foodquig had a viral surge based around a review of A. Glengarry, B. Laphroaig, C. Ardmore. What was the review that got that viral surge? It was a bittersweet review, I'll warn you. It is bittersweet, it's real life. And there's a reason that it went viral, but I'll let you check it out on your own if you haven't already. Was it around A. Glengarry, B. Laphroaig, or C. Ardmore? All of these distilleries are from the same producer, you might notice. See what you're saying? I think this is a giveaway for most of us, right? We all know who Quig is. Very unique character. Gentleman as well. Okay, let's have a look. It was based around B. Laphroaig. Wasn't he the one who got kind of famous, the way of saying, for the review where his girl was packing in the background? Yeah, that's exactly the one, Dewey. That's exactly the one. Okay, let's go on to question 9. Which of these is a unique claim of the new Ardnahoe distillery on Islay? So this is something, a feature or a claim from Ardnahoe distillery on Islay that's unique to them in the context of Islay, okay? Is it A, they have a unique view across the Sound of Jura? B, they were the first Islay distillery to open in the 21st century? Or C, they're the first Islay distillery to have operational worm tub condensers? A view across the Sound of Jura to the Paps of Jura to the island of Jura. B, the first distillery on Islay to be founded in the 21st century. Or C, the first to have active operational worm tubs used in condensation. Worm tubs are considered to be very, very important when it comes to texture in whiskey. The way that the spirit is condensed can mean that it has a nice, heavy, oily texture that's desirable in so many malt whiskies. Craigellachie, Glenkinchie, Mortlach, all famous for their methods of condensation. Lots of people seem to think it's about the worm tubs, of course. Nobody seems to think it's to do with the view across the Sound of Jura. Let's have a look. Ardnahoe claims to be unique in their use of worm tub condensers on Islay. There you go. So there might have been a bit of a giveaway there. Maybe you all knew that. Maybe you used a process of elimination, or maybe I gave it away when I was talking there. I'm not sure. Finally, question 10 might just make it under 2 hours. I'm not sure. Question 10. Let's see. Johnnie Walker's signature square-shaped bottle was introduced when? The square-shaped bottle, the one I showed you tonight. Was it in 1860, 1908, or 1960? When did they introduce a square-shaped bottle? 1860, 1908, or 1960? I had no idea. I knew the story behind it, but I wasn't sure when it came in. Maybe I would have guessed this, but I don't know. I think a lot of you are going to be guessing this. But they used a square-shaped bottle, obviously, to try and use less shipping space. There was a suggestion that it caused less breakages as well. I think that's more to do with less movement and things when it was being packed. I'm not sure. Jimmy Legg is saying C, to avoid being 2 for 10. Oh, wow, you're on 2 for 10 right just now, Jimmy Legg. Don't worry about it. I think this was a tough quiz tonight. Lots of people, yeah, there's all over the place. B's and C's seem to be the popular one. Jason Coates is saying guessing 60. 1860 or 1960. You've got a 100-year swing there, Jason. Come on, my man. Come on. Okay, let's have a wee look. Let's put you out your misery. Johnnie Walker introduced a square bottle in 1860. 150, knocking on for 150 years ago. No, 160 years ago, actually, isn't it? Of course, we're nearly in 2020. 160 years ago, they introduced a square bottle and the label that's angled exactly at 24 degrees so they could fit more font and increase the size of it on the label and make it obvious from a distance. Fantastic. Let's see. Jason Coates is saying was hoping to sneak that by. Chancer, good effort, Jason, good effort. Jimmy Legg is raging. Jimmy, not every week is your week, my friend. Please don't let it put you off. Come back. Defeat the quiz at the end. Everybody is capable of doing it. Let's see what the scores are. 6 out of 10 for Love Street. He's unhappy about that. JW Baseman is saying, wow. Graham Young is saying, Ardnahoe has a great view from the pier of the Paps of Jura. I sat there this summer and had a dram of Buna 25. Fantastic. Graham, of course, you can't have any Ardnahoe for a while yet. Marku is saying, the hardest quiz ever, 2 out of 10. Unlucky. Daniel Vermaas saying 9 out of 10. Last question was a guess. Wow, Daniel, that looks like being our best score tonight. Well done, my friend. Well done, Daniel. 9 out of 10 is fantastic. I'm just scrolling through. It's going fast. Anybody else up there? 8 out of 10 for Tristan. History. That looks like a new name, Tristan, and a fantastic score as well. Well done. Austin Wang got 7 out of 10. Just happy to pass. Clear pass mark, Austin. Well done. Whiskey Bowman is admitting he lost count at 5 or 6 out of 10. Either way, it's a pass mark. Danny is saying 0. Maybe you can go back and watch on the replay, Danny. Maybe you didn't catch it all. Kevin Grant is saying 4 out of 10 again. Still not a bad score for a Padawan, Kevin. Well done. Baldy Raj, 7 out of 10. Tremendous score. Andy Garbage Muncher, man, I'm rubbish. What did you score, Andy? I'm going to scroll up and see what you scored. Did you share it with us? No, you've kept it to yourself. No problems. Listen, it's not intended to be easy. If it was an easy quiz, it would be dull. It's got to be a bit challenging. It's got to have something in there that would stimulate a bit of curiosity, a bit of fun, a bit of discussion, a bit of engagement. Who knows? Please, if you're watching this and you've got some opinions, by all means, you can share them in the live chat, but they're kind of gone, especially after I cut it. Leave it in the comment section afterwards. Feedback to me. Tell me what I've got wrong tonight. Tell me what I've rushed. Tell me what I could improve on. But if you're enjoying yourself, please tell me that as well. And of course, I'll be back here, not next week. I'll be back on the 31st, which is the last Thursday of the month. I know it's round about Burns night, but it's not going to be a Burns theme. The reason being I did the Burns thing last year, and what could I bring this year that's new again other than, I guess. And also last year it was actually on Burns night that I did the live stream, whereas Burns night falls on a different night, of course, in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm going to take a break next week. If you're a patron, stay tuned because I'm going to be releasing some news and things out to the guys on Patreon. So I won't be completely quiet. And I am putting a couple of video projects together over the next couple of weeks. I'm just trying to squirrel away little pockets of time to do that, to put out some pre-recorded content as well. I'd like to say thank you so much to that superstar, that ball of whiskey energy that is Jason Whiskey Wise down in London, for looking after me one more time, helping me out with the direct chats as well. He sent me through, Jordy V sent me a super chat saying, first live here, love your videos, enjoy the small dram. Oh yes, I did get that, Jordy. I did get it. And Nicholas has asked me about the merch. I did pick up that one as well. Nicholas has also sent across a virtual dram in the dying moments of the stream, saying, as always, a great live chat, sir. Thank you very, very much, Nicholas. See, in this moment, when I'm still live, and I'm not very sure what I've talked about for the last 2 hours, I have no perception of the quality or the, I don't know, the cohesion of what I've spoken about. So it's good to have the feedback. I'm going to hold this glass up and say, Nicholas, thank you very, very much for your virtual dram. Not bad. Johnnie Walker Black Label. Not bad. Come on. Good ambassador, I would say. Multi-Haggis Manchester saying, thanks again for a great vPub. Matthew, you're very, very welcome. Wonderful to have you. Christina has just sent me across a wee virtual dram as well. Thankfully, I've got a wee drop of liquid left in this glass to raise it to you. Christina saying, cheers to you. Officially my last vPub for the next 16 weeks. I didn't want to say. But I'll catch you on the replay. That's a shame, Christina. I'm going to look out for you when you do appear back again. And listen, if you are watching on the fly, please make your presence known. It's always great to have you in. Always love hanging with you and everyone else. It's always a pleasure to have the High Priestess of Ardbeg in our company. Thank you, Christina, for the dram. Sláinte to you. Jimmy Legacy, love these live pubs, love the people, great fun. That's what it's all about. The community is fantastic. You can see it early in the replay. Daniel is saying, "Oh wow." Hoyt is saying, "Hoyt, good to see you in. I really enjoyed your Burns Night one last year." Yeah, that was quite early on. I actually cut the haggis, didn't I? I addressed the haggis. Frank Harding is saying, thanks as always. You're very welcome, Frank. Wonderful to have you in. Gregor is saying, everything's cool. Aquavite, Roy. Fantastic, Greg. Good to see you in again. Wonderful people. You're all fantastic. Do I have anything that's urgent that I need to share with you before I go? Perhaps. I've got a lot of things written here, but it can wait for 2 weeks' time. Thanks to everybody for joining in. Thanks for hanging out with each other. Thanks for all your positive feedback. You're wonderful, wonderful people. And until the 31st, I'll raise my very last drop of JW Black and say, Sláinte, whiskey folks.